So this is a Workday Studio training, and as part of the demo, I'm going to give quick introduction to Workday Studio. What is Workday Studio, and when to use Workday Studio, and then followed by we will spend some time to discuss about the Workday Studio. What is the different phases in the Workday Studio and development, and then I will walk through the course content, and followed by I will explain about the schedule and tenant access. If you are already working on Workday, or if you are attending the techno-functional course, uh, we know there are three options to build the integrations. One is EIB, Enterprise Interface Builder, Core Connector, and Workday Studio. And each integration option have their features and some limitations. And the first question is, whenever you get any requirement, the first question is which integration to develop or build. Should I go for Cloud Connect, or should I go for EIB or Workday Studio? So the general process suggested by most of the people is, whenever you get the requirement, first check, is there any Workday delivered configurable integration? Means, is there any vendor specific connector is available? If vendor specific connector is available, then use that, as those are vendor specific connectors are developed and maintained by Workday with very less efforts, and with very minimal configuration. You can develop the integration. If you don't have vendor specific connector, then check, is there any core connector available, which are integration templates delivered by Workday. These templates they provide the basic framework required to build the integration. You will use that template, generic template, and you will build the integration on top of that. Okay, assume there is no Workday delivered configurable integration for your requirement. Then you have two other options to build the custom integrations: EIB and Workday Studio. Again, EIB. When we use EIB, if you have any custom report, if you want to share that custom report output with the vendor, then you will use the EIB outbound integration for such a simple requirement. And people say we use Workday Studio for complex integrations. What does that mean? How do you define an integration is complex? Or what are the different scenarios or requirements where we use the Workday Studio? So I have listed those here. Okay, before we go, let's start with what is Workday Studio. We already learned how to build the EIB and core connector, and we build the those two integrations, like how we do the other configuration. We log into the Workday from the browser, and there we develop the integrations. But coming to Workday Studio is an Eclipse based environment. If you are familiar with the programming, especially Java or even .NET, when we develop such programming applications, in that programming we use some IDEs, integration development environments. So they provide all the options or options or help that is required to develop the application, or help you to write the code easily. And for Java we have an IDE called Eclipse, And Workday Studio is an Eclipse based plugin or Eclipse based environment. Means it sends again a software. If you want to develop the studio integration, then first you have to install that. It's like a Eclipse, so you can download that Workday Studio from the community and you can install. So we will forward the instructions to download and install the Workday Studio. So this is how it looks like, the Workday Studio. This is Eclipse based environment, and currently we are in Workday perspective, means Workday environment, and it allow you to develop the Workday Studio integrations. So Workday Studio is an Eclipse based environment, and it allows Workday customer and third parties to develop, deploy, debug, and support their own complex integrations. In simple, we use Workday Studio to develop complex integrations. First, we will install that, and there we develop the Studio integrations. And here, the next question is: do we write any coding? We understand it's an separate software which has to be installed, and it allow us to develop the complex integrations. The next question is: do we write any coding here? No. Workday Studio, it provides a lot of reusable components. Here everything is in UI based development. We don't write any coding. So Workday provide a lot of components. It provides a lot of components, and as part of the development we use those reusable components. Example, you want to call a report from the Studio integration. There is a component. If you want to call a web service, there is a component. And you want to write a message to the integration event, there is a component. You want to generate the output file, there is a component. Those are the reusable components delivered by Workday. And Studio integration development involves it basically it's all about identifying the component and using that component. And as part of the course, I focus more on that. I will explain few scenarios. Hey, this is a general requirement that we get as part of Studio training, and for that requirement, these are the components we have to use. And okay, I will go by each component. Hey, this is the component, and this is the purpose, and this is how to use that. And once you combine all these components or arrange them in a proper manner, it build in Workday Studio integration. So our training focus on introducing the assembly diagram, nothing but the Studio integration, that UI, and key components, the different components delivered by Workday, and how to use those components to develop the Studio integration. Okay, now let's discuss about when to use Workday Studio. The first one is multiple data sources and our delivery requirements. When the you have to build an integration, and for that we get the data. One second. For that integration, we get the data from multiple sources. Example, we get some data from a report, and we get some other data from some web service, and some additional information from the report. Just assume we have such complex requirement where we have to read the data from multiple data sources, file, web service, and the report. Then you cannot build such integrations in EIB or the core connector or cloud connects. If you take EIB, you can use either custom report or single web Workday delivered public web service as the data source. If we take the connectors, it's all about integration services. Though you can read the or call the report, again it's going to be complex. You can achieve this simply using Workday Studio. So how we can read data from different sources and which components are available, that we will discuss part of the codes. And next, scalable and efficient processing of large data set. When you have to process large amounts of data, then we go for Workday Studio. Because Studio supports scalable processing. There is a concept called scalable programming or scalable processing. What it says is, don't process the data at once. When you are building the integrations, which has to process the large amount of data, don't process that large amount of data at once. Okay, split the data into small chunks and process that. So if you have to process the data, large amount of data at once, first you have to load the entire data into memory RAM, and that processing consume a lot of memory. And what Workday suggests is, or this scalable processing suggests is, when you build the integrations, assume the amount of data, though the process, the size of the data is less, it suggests always assume the amount of data we have to process is large, and split the data into chunks and process it. And to do that, Workday has components. There is a component to split the data. We call it a splitter. See here, some component like this. And there is another component to aggregate the data. The concept is, when you have large amount of data, first split that, process the individual records, and again aggregate or combine that. There is another component for that. And next, complex looping or branching logic based on the dynamic data or external variables. You need some looping. You have some code and you want to execute that code for several times, or based on the data, incoming data, or based on some condition, or you have to write some conditions, branching that conditional statements. Then we go for Workday Studio. You can implement conditional branching. Simple, if the if or else, or switch logic, switch case logic, or looping for loops, or while loop. So if you need such features, you can do it in the Workday Studio. Okay, see, when you use the EIB or core connector, you can write the loopings in XSLT. Once you have the XML file, the actual output of the integration, while transforming that into another format, you can write some looping inside the XSLT. But I need the looping while generating the actual file itself, not just during the transformation. Or whatever the data we
whatever the data.
could you please be on mute? So whatever the data we receive from the report or input file, based on the some data, let's say uh, our integration is reading some input file, and that file contains worker records. What you have to do is you have to read record by record, and if any record missing the let's say employee details, the file contains the employee details. If any one of the record miss the employee ID, you want to go for an alternative process. Instead of depending employee ID, let's take employee name. So then you can use this conditional statements and sophisticated change detection requirement. Now, we can achieve the change detection easily in core connectors. EIB a bit difficult because you have to implement the change detection in the report, but we can achieve whatever the change detection is required, we can achieve through uh, connectors. But if any additional complex change detection is required, we can do it in Workday Studio. And next, error handling. We can handle this simple exception handling or error handling in EIB or core connectors. We have a concept called XTT and ETB, XML to text, element to element validate transformation and validation. Using those XTT and ETB, we can handle exceptions, means simple exception handling in EIB or what is that core connectors. When you transform the XML file into other formats, we can use these XTT and ETB attributes inside the XSLT. And if any of the required data is missing, you can report that to the integration event by writing some error or warning message. But if you need the complex error handling, means again, when I say we can handle the simple errors or exceptions in core connector or EIB, again we can do it only in XSLT. Okay, not at the initial stage. Take the same example. Your integration has to read the file and then split and read record by record. If any record is missing employee ID, then you want to log an error. You want to notify the user. So what you will do is, using this error handling or exception handling concept, you will throw an error and you will log the error message to the integration event, or you can collect all such errors and then you can create an exception file. Okay, so when you need such error handling, you can use the we use the Workday Studio. And the next, source code control, unit testing, debugging. Whenever you want to perform some unit testing of your integration, or you want to have the source control like versioning tools, or what you want to do is, whenever you develop or build the integration, you want to add some log so that you can debug or understand that better. So whenever you need such feature, logging. And if you are in simple, if you want to develop your integration in formal development disciplines, if you take any other uh, application development using high level language like Java, C Sharp, means .NET, what we do is we follow these disciplines. We think about we care about the source control, and we perform the unit testing, and we also debug the code, and we add the log so that when any something went wrong, we can also use the log files for the debugging purpose. We can do all this in Workday Studio. And finally, need to extend with custom capabilities implemented in Java, Spring, or third-party services. What you can do is you can enhance or you can create the custom components. Okay, you Workday delivered few components and they have the uh, defined behavior. If you want to implement any custom components, or if you want to extend the Workday by uh, what is that external Java or Spring components, you can integrate those with the Workday Studio. But we, until there is really requirement, complex requirement, generally we don't go for the additional custom components. But if required, we can do it in Workday Studio. So these are the requirements or scenarios where we use Workday Studio. Yes. And do you have any queries? Okay, good. So next, our last slide for today, different phases in the Workday Studio development. So we have been discussing Workday Studio is in separate software where we have to install. So then the next question is how the development process happens. What are the different phases? If it is EIB or core connector, directly we log into the Workday in the browser and there you can develop the integration. Coming to Workday Studio, there are different phases. First, design. What we do is once you install the Workday Studio, you develop the studio integrations here. First, you design or develop. Based on the requirement, you will identify the components and you drag those reusable components into assembly diagram or studio. Let's call it as assembly diagram. You will get the clarity later. So drag those components to into assembly diagram and develop or design your studio integration. The next, once the design is over, then what you have to do is you have to deploy. You have to deploy your developed studio integration in Workday Cloud. This is in installation, offline installation. So whenever you design the studio integration, it will be in your local machine. Once the development is over, you have to deploy that into Workday Cloud. You can do that from the Workday Studio. See, you design the integration in Workday Studio, and from the Workday Studio, you deploy that into Workday Cloud. Next, once you deploy the integration in the Workday Cloud, then if this integration requires any configurations, like you want to configure the delivery service, or you want to configure the notifications, or you want to change the business process of this integration, then what you do is you will log into the Workday from the browser and from there you can configure. You cannot configure your integration from the Workday Studio. You can design, and once the design is over, you will deploy that. After deploying, you will log into the tenant and from there you will configure the integration. The configuration means configuring the notifications or scheduling or um, configuring the integration attributes or retrieval service, delivery service, or if you want to change the business process, you can do it from the Workday application. Once the configuration is over, your integration will be ready for running or scheduling. So after that, you can launch or schedule the integration. You can launch the integration either from Workday Studio or from Workday application. You can do it from either application. What is that? Either Studio or Workday. And also you can also monitor whatever the integration you launch. You can monitor that from the Workday Studio or Workday application. So these are the different phases in Workday Studio integration development. So to do this, to design, deploy, configure, and launch and monitor, so which components are required and how we can configure, how to launch or monitor the Studio integration, that will be covered as part of the course. And this is the course content. And like when people do the Workday certification, that certification course content splitted this into two parts. One is basic studio and advanced studio. So as part of the course, I'm going to cover both. We start with the Workday Studio basics, how to install Workday Studio, and how to welcome to Workday. It's all about how to install and how to get familiar with the Workday environment, and what is the security required to develop or deploy studio integrations, and the basic navigation. Basic navigation means here, see, first you should be familiar with the environment. I mentioned during what is the development phases, first we design the studio integration. So, and when you design, it will be in your local machine. So the next question is, where can I find such projects? The projects are studio integration which are part of my local machine, Project Explorer. Once the development is over, I have to deploy to Workday cloud. So to deploy, first you have to connect to the Workday cloud. So how can I connect? How can I connect to the Workday cloud from the Workday Studio? So for that, you have another Explorer called Cloud Explorer, and we have Schema Explorer or XPath Explorer. So we will be familiar with those, the basic navigation and the Studio platform and assembly is nothing but these are the general common some terminology, Workday Studio terminology. So we will understand that, and launching the integrations from tenant. Yeah, this is anyway we know how to launch or schedule the integrations from a tenant. See, once you design and deploy your studio integration to the tenant, you can schedule or launch like other applications. We start with creating simple assembly project, nothing but studio integration. We start with creating a simple studio project, and we will discuss about how the flow means. When we build the integration, I've been mentioning its studio contains a lot of reusable components. Developing the integration means using those components and place them in proper order. So what we do is we also learn how the information flows from one component to another component. We discuss that, and we will familiar with the different studio components and scalability. See how to how to develop the integrations in scalable manner. We talk about components called splitter, aggregator, and Workday public web services. If you want to get the data from Workday, or if you want to update any data in Workday, it's all about web services. So assume you are building an integration and you have to get the data from Workday, and there is a Workday delivered web service for that, and you want to call that web service from the studio integration. So how to call that? We will discuss about that. Workday public web services. Uh, if you already worked on the EIB inbound, in EIB inbounds, what we do is, yes, there also we use the web services, but we create spreadsheet template for the web service. We don't directly prepare the web service requests. What we do is, in EIB inbound, we use the web service. First, we identify the web service that is required to update the data in Workday, and based on that web service, with the help of EIB inbound, we create the spreadsheet template. I think with the Excel sheet, a UI form, in simple, an UI form of that web service. We fill the data in that Excel sheet and we upload while running the EIB inbound integration. But coming to Workday Studio, if you want to call any web service, if you want to use any web service, first you have to prepare the web service request. You have to prepare the web service request, then use that web service request, means send that request to the what is that OMS, and it will return the data, or it will update the data. So we learn about how to call the web services from the studio integration. And just now I mentioned, if you want to call any web service, first you have to prepare the web service request. So when you prepare the web service request, there is a component or feature called web service tester. With this, you can test your web service request. You have prepared a request, but how can you say it is working as expected or it is valid? You can test your request, web service request, using web service tester. And yeah, calling that, how to call that web service from assembly. So here we become familiar with the different web services, and here you can test your web service request, and later we learn how to call that web service operation from the studio project. We learn how to call a report, RAS. You have a report and you want to call that from your integration, so how to call that. And store component, your integration is generating some output files, so how to store or how to save that information as the file. And next, delivery service, if your integration has to deliver file, how to deliver the files. Consolidated report writer, so there is a option in Workday Studio for consolidate report writer. So see, I will explain you, like, again I should have some, sorry guys, I'm suffering from cold. So here we have feature, I will explain you like how we are going to use that. We have to again load the report. Currently Workday is in weekly refresh down, so I cannot explain this, what is this and how we use that. And defining and considering report service for integration, it's again RAS. So this and these two are related. And the next, see, this is Workday Studio, and see, we focus more on advanced uh, topics or features inside these. Few of these, let's say here we have the reports, okay, our public web services. as part of the advanced studio, we focus more on the additional options, and there are few additional topics too. So the description, goal and object, okay, you can ignore. See RAS, report as a service. One second guys. Report as a service, the same. See, these both are same, but here what we do is, along with here, what we do is initially we learn how to call a report from the studio integration, and as part of advanced studio program we learn how to call a report which has the parameters. The report has some prompts, so how to pass the values to those prompts. And to pass the values to the prompts, first you should get those values from the end user. So for that we have concept called launch parameters. So we learn how to add the launch parameters and then how to pass those values as a prompt values. So we learn that, and we also learn about the variables and properties. And like in Workday Studio you can define variables and properties, so we learned that. And Studio Debugger, you can debug your studio integrations. So how to debug the studio integrations and how to uh, find the status or values of a particular variable or mediation message or another components at that particular point. And sub-assemblies, these are like libraries or reusable code. You are developing two studio integrations, and these two integration have some common code. Some code or some, let's say some configuration is common to these two integrations. So in that case, instead of writing the same code in two integrations, you can separate that code. Instead of implementing in the two integrations, create an subassembly like DLLs or individual components, individual code, and whenever you need this component, you can call or you can use it in your integration. It's like a functions. And you know, if you're familiar with the DLLs or jar files, yeah, subassemblies are like that. And splitters and aggregators, so which helps for the scalable programming. How to use splitters and aggregators, I will discuss that. Workday in transport service, all Workday studio integration starts with Workday in component. There is a component called Workday in component. This is the starting point of all the studio integrations. Means each studio integration starts with Workday in component, and in this component what we do is whatever is required, like which services are required, which attributes or maps or which reports you want to call from the integration, you define everything here. If you want to add any launch parameters, you will do that here. If you want to add any services, say attribute map service, if your integration needs any attributes or maps, or if you want to deliver the file, you will use the delivery service. And retrieval service, your integration has to read a file, so for that we have the retrieval service. Sequence generator, means your integration is generating some output file and you want to assign some sequence. It's like sequence generator in EIB or core connector. So this in Workday in component, yes, we define all these. So you should know all the what is that options that are available in Workday Studio. And integration attributes and maps, how to add maps or integrations to your studio We learned that yes, sequence generator same, ML. In Workday Studio, I mean in Studio integration, sometimes you have to write the expressions. You have to write the expressions, and for that we use a language called ML. Um, it's an expression language. So we will talk about more later. So expression means, see, we will discuss more about this later. So in this integration, what I do is uh, I have to read an input file. I have to read an input file. So to write an to read an input file, I write some statement. Let's say statement. Here we call it expressions, but you can also call it as a statement. So to write such statements or expressions, we use this language, ML language. And here, after reading the file, what I'm doing is I'm splitting the file and I'm reading the individual records. I'm reading the employee ID and I'm storing in this property, and I'm reading the termination date from that file and I'm storing here, and reasons, termination reason. Like this, whenever you want to write some statements, we use ML language. So what it is and how to write the ML expressions, we learned that. And using parameters in XSLT means in your integration you have to do some transformations. So in that case, what you can do is you can pass some data from your Studio integration to XSLT. So we learned that a root component. Say there is a component called root component, and if you want to develop any looping or conditional branching, if then else, you can use this component. So we learn how to use that. Again, error handling, in detailed discussion on error or exception handling, and retrieval service. Your integration has to read some file. So how to configure that? In EIB and core connectors, we learn delivery service. How you can configure the delivery service to deliver a file to an endpoint. But if your integration has to read a file, for that we use a retrieval service. So we learn this. So as part of the course, I'm going to cover this. Do you have any queries? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. If you have any queries, you can unmute at any point. So I'm planning to start the studio regular sessions from January 4th morning India time onwards. That's going to be January 3rd evening US time. Timing would be around 9 p.m. To 10 p.m. EST, which will be 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. IST. So I'm planning to start the, hold on just 1 second please. So I'm planning to start the regular sessions from that day onwards. Please talk to the organizer for the details.
Well, so sorry, do you cover hash maps in this course by any chance?
Yes, that will be covered. Did I mention that? Yes, that will be covered, hash maps.
Okay. Up to what level of complexity will be covered?
Complexity, see, based on your requirement. Okay, see, here we are not here to discuss about developing the complex integrations, but mostly our training focus on what are the different components we use in Workday Studio development. See, if you take the complex integration, it's all about logic, right? But if you take a, even complex requirement, obviously we are going to use these components only. So if we use Workday in, yes, we are going to cover that. Splitters and aggregators, yes, those will be covered. And exception handling, yes, that will be covered. And transforming the files from one format to another format. CSV to XML, text schema, those will be covered. Hash maps covered. And attributes, maps, and launch parameters, calling the web service and calling the report and retrieval service, delivery service. Whether it is a simple integration or complex integration, you are going to use these. What
Okay,
else?
I get. Okay,
The,
another last question, I
my
promise.
point is, see, the
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Yeah.
it's all about the logic. Okay, but here we are not here to discuss about the logic. Here to which components are available when you get such when you has to implement such logic. We focus more on that.
Okay. Would you be able to teach? Will you be also teaching us or showing us how to combine two files, how to club two files, or if we have to write into a single file, if the data source is from two different RAS reports, but the output is just one file, will you be able to show us those?
Yes, I will show you, but
Okay.
I will explain in a different approach. See, thing is, I will make you familiar with how to call a report, and I will explain how to read the file from the uh, input file. Okay, the next I will also explain how to store that value. Let's say you call a report and use the splitter, you have one record, and how to store that record in a variable temporarily, and how to read the input file, and how to read split that, and how to read the individual record from that file. And next, once how to store that. Okay, when you have the data from that report record and the input file record, the next combining means what you do. Again, it's
To
about
try to store
storing and
both.
storing,
Okay.
appending that information. And how to append? Using properties plus symbol, you can append that. See, here my way of approach would be, see, I don't cover these scenarios, but how to implement that scenario and which components we can use, I will make you familiar with that. So later you will be able to do whatever you want with this information.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, guys, any other queries?
Ishwar,
Yes, Dinesh.
what is the duration of this class actually? Like how many hours you're planning?
Right. See, the duration of the course is 4 weeks. 4 weeks, and daily session duration would be 1 hour, and later we can have up to 1.5 hour. Okay, and yeah, let me stop the recording. Yeah, anyway, let me record it. I'm sorry. So yes, the duration would be 4 weeks. 4 weeks means daily around of 15 to 20 hours. As I have been mentioning, the duration of the workday study is approximately 20 hours. So if we have one session that too only on weekdays, it's going to be 4 weeks. But usually I request participants to spend at least 1.5 hour if possible, so that we can finish it 3 weeks, and remaining week participant can practice, and we can focus more on question and answers and general scenarios, the best practices. And each and every session will be recorded, and that will be uploaded in the Google Drive. You will have the access to those. You can watch those recordings after the session. And for this duration, 4 weeks or max 5 weeks, the tenant will also be provided. And you can practice the studio integrations too.
Okay, sure, thanks.
Thank you. And as I mentioned, I'm planning to start the regular sessions from January 4th, India morning, that is third evening US time onwards. Please talk to the organizer for further details. Yes, any last minute queries? Okay, thank you. Let me stop the recording.